Hi, everybody. So I'm Wasim. Uh, I'm a physician from India. Uh, and 10 years ago, my friend and me, we set up this company, having no idea where we're going to go. Uh, Here we are, 10 years later. And thankfully, just 3 bankruptcies later. So I guess we've kind of found a way to survive bankruptcy over the years. He's also a physician. He's a surgeon, in fact. And both of us set up this company in 2009. So when I talk about this bankruptcy, it seems to fascinate people that we survived bankruptcy not one, not twice, but about 3 times, and nearly a fourth one a couple of years ago. So, needless to say, uh, almost every startup is going to go through this at some point or the other. And as a fresh medical graduate, I used to watch House. How many of you have seen the House? House MD, the TV series. Nobody? Okay. I'm already feeling very old. Ah, yes, somebody who's seen it. There's one episode. Ah, there's one more. Nice. There's one episode and one specific dialogue from Dr. House. Yes, some of us hate him, a lot of us love him. I certainly love him. And there's one particular quote from him in one episode that is stuck by me for a very long time. And that I think applies here. There is an African American presidential candidate who gets sick, and Dr. House is treating him. So, when he's about to give up, saying that people would probably never accept, and this was way before Barack Obama became president. So I guess it was still relevant then when he said that this country might never have a black president and might never have a gay president. And Dr. House goes ahead and tells him, you know what? I can foresee this country having a black president. I can foresee this country having a gay president. I can foresee this country having a gay and black president. But what is never going to happen is this country cannot and will never have a black, gay, and dead president. So no, you cannot give up. That made a lot of sense over the years for me. That the minute you're dead, you're gone. There is no chance of recovery. And if there's one thing that's going to keep us as entrepreneurs going through and coming on the other side of our dream uh, and coming out alive is we don't give up. So with that little anecdote from one of my favorite TV shows, let me start. So what is Techmed? 10 years ago, my partner and my friend, I met him in college. We've been friends for about, I think, 18 years now. From 2002 is when I met him. In 2009, and we were always talking about doing something. We never knew what, but we said we need to do something. So in 2008, sometime end of 2008, I think, or early 2008, he actually came up to me one day and said, hey, you're working in this big fancy Apollo hospital and everything's great there. When do your patients get their blood reports? I said, about 6-8 hours. He said, so if I come and get admitted in Apollo hospital for a surgery today, and I'm admitted, and if I give blood now, when will I get the blood? I said, everything will be up by tonight, and your anesthetist will have a look, and tomorrow you're good for surgery. And then he's like, But I'm consulting in about 4, 5 small, mid-sized hospitals where if you come and get admitted today, you have to wait for 2 or sometimes 3 days just to get the results of your blood test. And if you without the blood test, there's no way you're going to get clearance for surgery. So how do you? Why is that happening? I said, I don't know. You should tell me why it's happening. And that's where that's a simple question that we try to answer. Why does it take small hospitals 2 to 3 days, sometimes 4 days, to turn around a simple blood test? Tests essential for surgery. That was the basis for our company. I was practicing wellness and learning to be a wellness doctor. And this preceded this thought. So we tried looking around for answers. And we realized that while big hospitals have their own full-fledged laboratories, small and mid-sized hospitals cannot afford them. And therefore they outsource those tests to labs. And those labs are retail laboratories. The, the labs are aimed at servicing retail patients who are mostly outpatients, who go to a doctor for consultation. They're not emergency, they're not admitted in a hospital. And therefore there was no urgency to turn around those tests. And so when hospitals, mid-sized hospitals were giving samples to them, they took their own sweet time to turn it around. And nobody asked any questions. That's just the way it was. So we tried to see if we can do something about it. So to the hospital where he was working, he went and said, why can't we do this ourselves? The hospital owner, a surgeon himself, he said, hey guys, you're a physician, you're a surgeon. You're not lab doctors, you're not a pathologist, you're not a microbiologist. What do you know about running a lab? Why do you want to do this? He said there's something wrong in the system. You should try it. And on that day, the vice president of India's leading laboratories was right outside his office. And before we went into his office, the VP had just left from that office. I think they had talked about a larger partnership. So then he thought for a while, the hospital owner, he said, okay, it sounds interesting. What you're saying makes sense. Yes, why should it take so long? And how come we never questioned this? If the running time for a blood test is about 4 or 6 hours, why should it take 3 days to turn it around? So we said, okay, let's try and do this. So we tried and worked with equipment that was available. We worked with some little vendors to see if we could get reagents and do it ourselves. And guess what? In about 2 months, we were able to turn the lab around, and an admitted patient started getting their blood test in about 4 to 6 hours. But that's not what was interesting. This laboratory, which was inside a hospital, was doing gross revenues of about 5 or 6 lakhs, about 3 or 4 lakhs, I'm sorry. That translates to about $8,000 to $10,000 a month as revenues before we stepped in. But after we stepped in, that $8,000 to $10,000 doubled in 3 months to about $20,000. Now that shocked us. This wasn't the aim of this little project of ours. We weren't trying to double revenues. We weren't trying to grow the business. All we wanted to do was turn around the test faster over a couple of months. In fact, it took us 3 months to set this whole process. And by the 6th week, it started. By about 3 months, the tests were going super fast. But why did the revenue go up? We weren't marketing more. We weren't getting more people to write tests. It was the same hospital, same number of patients. As this laboratory efficiency improved inside a small hospital. More and more consultants who were inside the hospital and who were sending their patients outside to get tested started recommending the in-house laboratories to patients. A lot of those consultants didn't even know that some of those tests could be done in-house, inside the hospital. And they thought, because for 10, 15 years, we've been conditioned that you want to get a thyroid test done, send it up outside. Today, the situation is different. We are 10 years down. I'm talking 10 years ago. So the revenue doubled. And then we realized we kind of had a business model. No idea what a primary market research was. No idea what a beachhead market was. And yes, we made millions of mistakes along the way. Bankruptcy is proof of that. But we knew that there was a business model. And then we did a little study to see how many such hospitals are there and how many of them would benefit from this. But we knew that we were going to our own competitors. In reality, if you start a lab for hospitals, you're basically replacing the hospital's laboratory. And you're basically going to your competitor and telling him, I can do this job better than you can because this is not your core. Your core is to run a hospital. And that's how this company started. I will take you now through this journey of bankruptcy. This is just to give you a background of what we do and how we start off. So here we go. Like I said, I've taken this from Ray Kroc, from the movie The Founder. Secret to success is persistence. Yes, hard work is important. Yes, smart work is important. Yes, team is important. Everything is important. But if there's no persistence, there's nothing else is going to work. So for most startups, it is not a question of if, but definitely when you're going to run into cash flow issues. And more often than not, at the first hint of cash flow issues, we tend to give up. Because it puts a lot of things in doubt. It shakes our confidence. We are not sure if we can pull this off. And why are we not sure if we can pull this off is something that I bumped upon a lot later, called the Valley of Disappointment. I will touch upon that in one of the slides. And because it can shatter our confidence and makes us give up, I think it's important to foresee it so that you're better prepared. It's important because statistics now tell us that 82% of startups, 82% is the percentage of startups failing due to cash management or the lack of it. 79% of startups start off with too little money. But that's the beauty of startups, isn't it? It's you bootstrap. You're not sitting on a pile or a ton of money, and you're hustling and you're doing multiple things to make this dream of yours come true. And because in that whole run-up and passion that's involved, we don't handle cash so well. And that's a staggering number. 82 is not small by any means. So that's how we started. A surgeon saw the opportunity. We assembled a small team. I was the first follower. One of Bill Olet's favorite people, I think, in the team is the first follower. He has a lot of. He thinks that they're very important, and I didn't know till then that I was the first follower for Techmed. So we assembled a small team, just the bare minimum. We needed a front office manager. We needed some lab technicians. We took help from some colleagues and friends to see if they would sign the lab reports. And off we went. Challenges. There were many because we didn't foresee any of this. We just saw that there was opportunity and we jumped right in. There was no technology that could handle the laboratory of 20, 30 different hospitals. That technology didn't exist. because that business model didn't exist till we started off. Oh, by the way, we are India's first laboratory management company, hospital lab management company. So we didn't have a benchmark. We didn't know this term hospital lab management. We coined it in India. There was no tech, and building technology was not our forte. Manpower. As we started the next 2 3 years, we slowly realized that the manpower that we were looking for doesn't exist in the market, because hospital laboratories were designed in a way that they operate with 3 or 4 people, with lab techs, and the same 3 4 people stay on for 15 20 years. They don't grow. There's no growth path for them, and they just retire pretty much one cadre above what they started in their life. We were surprised that nobody did anything for them, and there was a rich pool of talent which had no growth. Machines, we couldn't afford those big huge machines, and so we had to look around and look for smaller machines that could do the job initially. But we realized that they came with a lot of trouble, so we went back to the big machines later in our journey. Needless to say, cash, there was no money. And like most entrepreneurs, we hustled. We went to the bank and we said, hey, we did a little pilot project, and it works and revenues are increasing. The bank looked at it and said, there's no such model in the market. Why isn't the big lab guys doing this if it's so profitable? We said, we don't know. That's what we were trying to find out. And we did. And yes, as you know, banks give money to people who have money, I guess. So we found it very difficult. They said you have to put in a significant amount of money as your contribution, as margin. So what did we do? We went to another bank and we said we want a personal loan. And the first bank said, you need to have some skin in the game. We hustled that too. So we went to this bank, a second bank, and we said we want a personal loan to improve our practices. The personal loan didn't have any collaterals or security involved, so we got that. It was about 15 lakhs, I think. That's about, during those days, with that exchange rate, it must have been about, I think, $25,000-30,000. We got that loan, and we went to the first bank and said, okay, so we have the money now to give you the margin. The first bank didn't have to know that that risk was by a second bank. It wasn't illegal. We checked. I know. And we got our first loan, and we got in some machines. Those were the early set of challenges. And our revenues grew like we expected. In 2010, we were touching about $250,000 for the year in revenues. By 2011, we had doubled. In 2012, we started to grow. But like I think in India, we attribute this quote to Mr. Adi Godrej, one of the biggest industrialists, who said top line is vanity, your gross profits are sanity, but your cash flow is reality. As you can see from our growth, we were growing, we were building a lot of revenues into the system. But because we were sharing a significant amount of the revenue with the hospitals, because we weren't paying rent, the hospitals brought their patients. We weren't marketing. We were servicing somebody else's patients, doing it a lot more efficiently. And therefore, while the revenues were big, our gross profits were quite small, and the whole account receivables and getting cash into the system was very, very thin. When you're operating on such thin lines, and most of us in some part, especially if you're operational heavy, if you're entirely technology driven and you don't have a lot of overheads, this may not apply to you. But in an operational heavy healthcare company where technology was an enabler, one bad move can bring the company down. And that's what happened to us. we got a huge opportunity, and this is the first lesson that we learned, that you don't jump at every opportunity. It might be counterintuitive to what we thought. Yes, there will be opportunities in Antarctica someday. Can you service it? Outside our comfort zone, we had a huge opportunity that had the potential to literally double our revenues in a quarter. And that opportunity excited us because it was our first venture into a medical college. A teaching hospital reached out to us and said, "Hey, you guys are doing a great job in small hospitals. Why don't you do this for us? We are having the same trouble." We didn't even think that huge hospitals will have that trouble. But it turns out that only corporate hospitals had the structure where they could. Uh, hey, I just saw that somebody asked me if I could speak a little louder. Am I okay now? Sorry if I wasn't audible. Yeah, all okay? Okay. So, yes. So we ended up at, we used up our very tiny cash reserves for working capital, which we were paying salaries. And we went and invested in that hospital outside our comfort zone. We were operating in 2 states in India by then. We had recruited, I wouldn't say recruit, we had forcefully, uh, I don't know, twisted two of our friends who were in big positions in large hospitals and companies to join us in our dream. We were able to sell it to them. And one of those guys was a medical director in a large hospital. And we told him, hey, we need operation support. We came with a vision. We came with a lot of other things, but we didn't come with operational efficiency. So you're the operations guy, and can you help us? He said, hey, I'm sitting in a hospital, and laboratory is one small division in a hospital. You're asking me to head a lab? We told him, dude, this is exactly what we thought when we started off, but it's a lot bigger than it is. And yeah, we sold him the dream. He's still with us. So when we took our short-term working capital and invested in equipment, disaster struck. May 2013, the month that I would probably never forget in my life, we were unable to make payroll. In April 2013, we had struggled. We had spoken to the hospitals where we had a lot of receivables, and we had defaulted on a bank payment, and we made the payroll. But May 2013, nothing moved. Salaries weren't going, and I wasn't handling finance at that time. I was taking care of the operations part, the front end, also building my wellness practice, where we had 2 divisions inside the company. The wellness was taking off. We had a lot of interested clients doing a lot of wellness therapies because it was very novel at that time. That wellness practice kept my sanity. I was in touch with medicine. I still am now. Still, I have my patients, so it keeps me very much in touch with medicine. But when I found out that we weren't going to make payroll, it came as a shocker. And that started a chain of events. First thing to go wrong was when the payroll doesn't go. It first shocked everybody because till that day, it was 2013, we started off in 2009 for 4 years, there was no delays. And in India, delayed salaries is not uncommon. If your salary date is 5th, you might get it down to 10 sometimes. It's not uncommon, but unable to make payroll was an issue. No payroll, demotivated staff, no marketing, so no new business was coming. We weren't able to pay the vendors, so we weren't getting supplies. And the banks were after us for payments because in April we didn't make the payment, and we had insisted that we would pay the staff instead of paying the banks to keep the business rolling. Supply issues started to come in, and we weren't dealing with any normal business. where we were dealing with lives. We were in hospitals. Hospitals had patients, and patients needed blood tests to make diagnosis and treat them. We had stock, thankfully, and when Masood had come in, we had just moved away from a just-in-time, and we started stocking things to ensure that there weren't delays in stocks, which had also eaten up some of the working capital, but it increased our efficiency in operation. And so we took stock of the situation and realized that we have about 30 days worth of stock, which means if we were able to convince our staff for 30 days, we would still be able to run with the existing supplies. But we didn't want to take that risk, and so we started engaging with vendors. The most painful 5 months followed from May to December. Staff was without paying them. We didn't have answers. We told them that we've invested in a large hospital in Kerala and it's doubling our revenues, but there's no cash in the system. And whatever came in, we had to literally ration our cash. Think about it. At that time, we had about 110 employees. We were 5 years into the business, 4 years. Yeah, 4 years into the business, and we had about 110 employees. We had three friends who had joined us in our in the system. Masood, the doctor, and one head of marketing, and one friend of Raja's. She's a very senior person, so she joined us, and we weren't able to pay. So that's where this comes in. If you quit, there is absolutely no chance of making it out. But I don't know how we got this. We realized that we had to take a very non-emotional view of the company itself. So this is the valley of disappointment that I was talking about. So I just bumped into this some time back. Most of us as entrepreneurs, or even in established businesses, when you have to start from scratch, like in this bankruptcy situation where a turnaround is almost as painful as starting, we probably overestimate what we can do in the short run and completely underestimate what we are capable of doing in the long run. And that little gap is this valley of disappointment. We keep expecting that we're going to hit this number sometime here, but we are here. And this gap is going to keep widening for a while till it catches up much later. So this time results is something that is probably extremely important, because from inside, when we are inside the business, when we are involved so much in the business, we don't have an impartial eye to the business itself, which is why we end up here. We are all optimism, and that's important as entrepreneurs. If you're not optimistic, if you are not optimistic about your product or your company, nobody else is going to be. But I think at some point there is going to be the difference between what you show outside, your confidence, and what you know for yourself. That reality there will be that difference. So we realize, what can we do now? In the short term, we said we have to take control of costs. Let's do cash management. Yes, it's not the greatest thing to do, but cost control and cash management are extremely important in the short run. In the long run, we have to see what was a profitability pathway, and to see if we are going to be in that valley of disappointment forever, hoping that in 3 months we can turn it on. We realize that it's not going to happen. I think that was the first acceptance, that was the basis of recovery from this bankruptcy, was understanding that this profitability turnaround is not going to happen in 3-4 months. And beyond 3-4 months, it's extremely difficult to keep a company alive if you are burning cash if you're negative and if you don't have cash infusion. So we realized that cash infusion had to happen. And then we decided on our priorities. We started off saying our priority one will be supplies. Next would be salaries. Next would be utilities, banks, and finally the government. If we had to handle it, we had to handle it. Did we get calls from the police? Yes, we did. Did we get calls from the authorities for delaying payments to the government? Yes, we did. Did we get threats? Yes, we did. But at that time, we didn't have a choice. It was whether are you going to succumb to the pressure, and when the authorities after you to say that, hey, get your payments done today, or we're going to do this to you. There is this temptation to solve that by taking your cash, whatever comes to the business, and solving your bank issues or the statutory dues. But what we realize is that if you don't run away from the problem, that's not your priority. Your priority should be to keep the business going. Visibility was very important. If we had to turn around, new business had to come in. And without marketing, new business wasn't going to come. We had to keep a tight leash on the existing business. We also realized that difficult times are great times for creativity. When you're stuck, the corner is when your brain thinks of things that you would normally not think of. Uh, so what our team did was when they ran out of credit with the supplier, the operations team, they went scouting for a different set of suppliers. We were in Chennai, which is a part in South India. There are times we've reached out to distributors and new suppliers in Kanyakumari, which is the southernmost point of the country. Sometimes about 300-400 miles away to see if somebody would keep the supplies going. When we were trying to find solutions for this problem, we realized, like I said, profitability wasn't going to happen in the short term, and therefore we had to do an infusion. And so we got an investment banker involved. A fresh perspective was helpful, and we realized that we have to get the company ready for funding. So, and this is the next thing that kept us alive, empowering our team. While Raja and me were the two founders, we had a next line of 3 people. One guy got so aggressive because salaries weren't going. He was a friend. And in his entire 10 years, the one regret that both me and my partner have is that one friendship got entirely ruined because of this. If any of you follow my LinkedIn, I don't want to name him, but 8 years after this problem, 8 years after the company started, I think 5 years after this problem, same guy who just got so aggressive and who was so negative at that point and trying to tell our existing team that this company is not going to survive and guys should go and find alternate jobs, and that Raja and me weren't committed and that we were making mistakes and we were not willing to learn. It came as a sort of a consolation that 8 years later he's looking at all of our milestones and commenting that you guys deserve this, you've done that, and all of that. But till today, that friendship hasn't been repaired. That was probably the biggest price we paid. But the other consolation is the other 2 who joined us, they took up more responsibilities. And this was important because it increased our mental bandwidth. When you're in such dire situations, your personal mental bandwidth is extremely important for this turnaround, because you are not available physically, mentally, morally, spiritually, financially. You're not going to be able to do this for your team. It's just not going to work. Your mental bandwidth is extremely important for a company's turnaround. And that mental bandwidth is very tiny to begin with, Bankruptcy will crush you. It'll make that negligible, negative. You have to go home and deal with family. Family support becomes helpful. But when I came to bootcamp, Bill had mentioned that your ideas are great, but your team is your greatest asset. A crisis like this will reinforce that time and time again. Do not stop answering phone calls is another lesson that we learned. Today, if any of you are following the Indian aviation industry, there's a lot of crisis there. And very ironically, there are two airlines who are bankrupt. Both are, one was run by a flamboyant entrepreneur who who's now has India has gotten permission to extradite him from London, and another airline who owes, in fact, more than the first airline. This is public news, so there's nothing to hide. Jet Airways and Kingfisher. The promoter of Jet Airways is still in India. He's still fighting. He has skin in the game, and even though he owes as much or if not more than what Kingfisher owes the banks and statutory dues, the system is trying to help him because he didn't run away. Vijay Mallya, who promotes Kingfisher, when this bankruptcy situation got to him, he decided to flee the country and try and make payments from wherever he was. I'm not sure it works. And for us, while it was as painful as it may have been to keep answering phone calls, in fact, one of our team members has gotten such a complex that till date, he doesn't have a ringtone to his phone, because the memories of those days when phone used to ring through the nights till today, 5 years after our problems have been solved, he has his phone on vibration. But when people know, yes, your company might be going through bankruptcy, yes, you have to pay vendors, yes, you have to pay salaries, but end of the day, it's two human beings talking to each other. And if you're respectful of the fact that you've done something, that even though it might not be in your control, that they're not wrong in asking you, in harassing you, somewhere that human connection begins to take over. And what we thought was going to be 3 months, till December, there was no solution. For 3 months, we couldn't pay people because then the bank came to us and said, hey guys, yes, we said you are willful defaulters. Yes, we harassed you a lot more, but we still believe you. You've not run away. You're still here 3 months down, putting everything on the line, your reputation, your names, your finances on the line. So we'll help you. We'll keep our payments aside. Start paying some of those vendors. Pay us one installment for the past 4 months. That will help us extend your credit more. And so we had to honor it. So when the revenues came inside and the new hospital revenues weren't, the cash wasn't kicking in, we paid painfully. We paid one EMI, and we couldn't pay some of the vendors and salaries. My partner and me, we went up to a very somber room. We said, guys, forgive us. We put you through so much of trouble. And all of them said, sir, you've not let us down yet. So we are confident that you're going to turn this around. And that kind of a boost, I think, helps when you're looking for a turnaround. Extremely, that we were able to do because we had some kind of a mental bandwidth from the team. The fact that slowly people started helping. The team said, yes, we have now taken some credit here and there. We've asked friends and family for help. Suddenly it feels like, I know how many of you have read The Secret, the whole universe and all of that. I've been through that. It suddenly feels that everybody's trying to help. Now suddenly it's not your problem anymore. Your employee, His uncle has now given him some money as loan to tide over this. So you don't have to pay him, and you can use that money to pay somebody else who needs the money now. Do not underestimate the power of a brave face. If people think you're scared, they're just going to try and squeeze as much as they can from you and put a stop loss and just say that I'm cutting my losses here. But if you're going to be around for them, and if they see that you're fighting, then this universe thing that I spoke about, that you start seeing that help is coming from everywhere. One vendor came in and said, boss, I've spoken to the company, to the master distributor, and extended credit for myself. So you don't worry about paying me. I'll make sure all your essential tests are running. And my colleague, Masood, so he was instrumental in getting this deal. And so suddenly, instead of 2 of us facing phone calls, it was 4, 5, 6, then 10, 12 of us facing phone calls. And even though the problem was getting bigger, suddenly there were more shoulders. And that's how the recovery started. In September 2013, we met with the first potential investor. We had no idea we had built a company that was the first of its kind in the country. And when we first met with the investor, it was like, where were you so long? How come we didn't see you? And we are in Chennai, which is not really, while it's a big city, it's not the hub of innovation or capital. Very underrated city. Because it's my city, I'm going to say that. Somebody from Bombay is here. I'm sure she's nodding. But it's not Mumbai or Bangalore. And the first potential meeting, we met 3 investors. In about 3 weeks, we had 2 term sheets. That shocked us. We're like, wow, we are in dire need of cash, and here there are people trying to invest in us. They saw our processes. They had seen how we had built a software and built technology around it as an enabler to a problem that is so large in the country. Even today, hospitals are very reluctant to give you their laboratories because ultimately, like I said, you're going to your competitor and telling him, I can do your job better than you can. I'll give you money in return for that. Give me your lab. That's essentially what we do. But the investors saw that the problem was so large, the market was large, the problem is real. And when we got 2 term sheets, we were shocked. In November, we had a due diligence. And another day that I cannot forget, December 7th, 2013, is when we were officially a VC-funded company. We didn't celebrate. We were so numb that really didn't celebrate. As soon as the check hit our bank accounts, we paid out all salaries first. We paid them a bonus of a month, and they went and celebrated. And we didn't even, looking back, I don't know why we didn't celebrate, but it just didn't happen. 2013, that's what you can see. We were 1 million revenues. We were in 2 states in India. We were 110 employees. 2019, we've just hit a 5 million revenue. Yes, we are still revenue, vanity, but our cash flows are better, obviously, much better. We are, every single unit of ours is profitable. Unit level profitability for a business, all that is a different webinar, if I may. But we've hit 5 million. We've grown 5 times. We are in 3 states. We are in 3 countries. We are in Nigeria. We are in Sri Lanka. Our second center in Sri Lanka is going to be up. Nigeria, we're working with the MD of Corn Oil. Somebody from Nigeria here, she might know. We have 400 plus employees now. We work with the Indian governments, the same model that we created for private hospitals. The government was very curious about what we did and how we did. So in one state where we were operating, or we are operating, in Odisha, we were working with the government because we were doing hospitals, and we had to build our initial challenges. We were overcoming one by one. We were overcoming the tech challenge by building our software around operations. We started a training program in-house because the employees we wanted didn't exist in the market. We needed lab managers, and that cadre of that didn't exist. We had to create them. So we created a training program for we created a training program for lab technicians to bridge that gap between the managers and the lab techs. So that program was, the government was quite interested, and so we are running about 32 government hospitals in the particular state. All the district hospital laboratories we're running, and we're able to give them a certain turnaround time. Therefore, the entire ecosystem benefits because your lab, which is the starting point for diagnosis, and without that, you're really not going to get anywhere. And with today's medical legal cases and litigations, everybody wants to be careful and they want to be 100% sure. And therefore, lab tests can get you to some kind of a certainty than just clinical examination. Will it happen again? So this was our first bankruptcy, but it did happen again 2 times after that. Definitely for a different day. Has your investors check bounce happened to us? Yes, you read it right. This is a VC company, VC investor whose check bounced. Yeah, was surprising for us. Choice of investor, who you partner with, how they can screw your life, is a real world problem. Underspending on marketing. If your sales cycle, for us, the sales cycle is very long because, again, we're talking to our competitors to give us the labs. The sales cycle is very, very long. So over the period of over the years, we've learned how to deal with that and how and that whole value of disappointment. We've learned to factor in a longer gestation for our short-term revenues. Growth spikes, yes. Like I said, we were the reason why we got bankrupt in the first place was because we were growing horizontally. We were putting our legs everywhere, but vertical growth before you, and that's where the beachhead market comes in. Everything makes sense now because if your beachhead market is very strong, you can expand that, and that's very, very true. The whole concept of beachhead market helped us understand multiple beachhead markets for our different products. And so we knew what kind of hospitals to take, what kind of people to target, what kind of people to train. When we went to Nigeria, and God willing, on the 28th of March, we're having an official opening in Nigeria in Lagos, VI, for who's from Nigeria. So yes, vertical growth is very important to prevent another bankruptcy. You have to get strong in a particular market. Be wary of professionals, consultants who come and say they know it all. Well, yes, they know it all, but in a certain constraint. We got sometimes best of minds, or what we thought was the best of minds, just couldn't fit into a new idea because they come and say, this is how it has to work. I've done it before. Okay, great, you've done it before. You have to adapt this to that. Yes. Because of all of this, a combination of these reasons, we got into cash flow issues twice later. But the second time we got into it, we were actually laughing because we said, okay, you know the drill. Let's do this. So it gives you that confidence. That's me. I think I slightly overshot what I was given time. So about 10 minutes, I think. So, yeah, that's my story, or our story. And if you have questions, I'm happy. I think I have one question. So I'm happy to take question. Hi, Scott. What do you mean by second line? Okay, sorry, I didn't elaborate. Second line was our next set of our first big hires, the friends I spoke about. Yeah, hi, Scott. Can you hear me? So yes, second line ran the company is basically our set of friends who joined us later. Today, of course, we're all equals, but they ran the company when we were looking for funds. Uh, so that's what I meant by second line. Should have elaborated that. Would it be possible, please, to seek topic-specific advice after the chat? Yes, I'm here. If it was an available option back then, would you have accepted or would you have sought angel investment? Sorry, if it was an available option back then, would you have accepted or would you have sought angel investment? That's a tough question to answer because uh, when we started off, starting a company to raise funds wasn't very common. Yes, it was around, but we all, yes, started companies because we wanted sales to fund us. So, no, I don't think we would have accepted or sought an angel investment because uh, how this was. That's not how this was started. We were quite self-sufficient, though on very very thin lines, and especially in early days of the company uh, especially in the early days of the company when you're still finding your feet. And the last slide I mentioned saying, be wary of professionals. People are going to come in and tell you all all of their experiences. And since you're uh, in a completely new domain, what we were doing didn't exist. And therefore, I think you have to make those mistakes and you have to learn from them. And angel investment, if it was somebody who would absolutely not interfere, maybe yes. But if 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 they see that your company is going bankrupt, they are going to come in and tell you, "Hey, you ruined the company, so let me now run it." I think that's the norm. So uh, yeah, I don't think we would have taken an angel investment for something like this. If it was a proven business model, yes. But otherwise, I think you have to learn, make the mistakes yourself, and learn from people like us, I guess, and see what kind of mistakes you can avoid. So yeah, it's a long answer. What would you think you could have done before starting the company to avoid bankruptcy? What would you have done before starting the company to avoid bankruptcy? So I followed Bill's advice on what is the best way to fund your company, which is sales. So the first few years, first 3 years, we were very thin in our profitability. So I don't think when we started the company, bankruptcy was we had factored a certain amount of cash flow till we break even. But I think the answer is do not jump at every opportunity. You have to evaluate every single uh, opportunity before you think that it's the whole vanity, sanity, reality thing. Yes, the opportunity in Kerala, which we took, which ended us in this bankrupt situation, I would have completely avoided that. I wouldn't have channelized our short-term finances for something that's going to take a long time to return to give you the returns. So that is important. You have to get strong first in a place and uh, don't do things in your control. The second time when the investment was delayed, it wasn't in our control. But the first one, we took the opportunity that wasn't ours, and that could have avoided the bankruptcy. I hope I've answered your question. I want to start a tech. I want to start a tech company, but don't have the technical skills to execute. But I have the knowledge on what I want. Whom should I get in my team, given that you have limited funds? Udemy. As a startup founder, you will be the company's greatest salesman, and therefore you have to sell your idea to somebody who has the skills. The same way my partner sold it to me. when he didn't have the skill sets, he didn't have business knowledge, and I came with a certain set of skills. He sold it to me, and I jumped in. So you'll have to paying somebody to do the job. Uh, if they're not passionate enough, they're going to leave you and go halfway. We've seen that happen too. So tech company, you don't have the technical skills. Your first sell should be to the guy who can build it, who can execute it, and get him on board and give him that stake, give him an upside for his sacrifices today, and that's the only way to go. I hope I answered that. How do you how do you leverage on bootstrapping to grow a startup in an economy with liquidity and currency uncertainties? So unfortunately, I am not well versed with that. Uh, in Nigeria, is the closest we've come to this, but we have a very strong local partner. We have leveraged on our expertise that we've built over the years for our international operations. So we have a strong local partner who's sort of doing this. Uh, so yeah, that's how he's handling it. So I haven't handled uh, startup in an economy with liquidity and currency uncertainty. So I wouldn't really know. Sorry. Thank you, Sergio. Thanks for joining. Deshik Siddharth. Hey, is this who I think you are? What kept you pushing forward during tough times? If you are who I think you are, I think you know what the answer is. Uh, it's that we still had a long way to go, and we had the conviction that we could reach there. And deep within, we knew that this was a short-term problem, and that there was something on the other side of the bridge that was much better than where we are now. That conviction, I think, is very important to push you forward during tough times. Without that, you're going to give up. So that's the answer you have. You have to believe that this is the short term, and therefore, yes, you have to take a non-emotional view of your company. But that's the answer. I hope I've answered yours. Did you have the product in mind before you started the company? Sorry, I missed a few minutes. Shrestha. Hi. So, not really. We started to solve a problem. That was our only goal. When we solved the problem, we realized that there was a business around it, and we could solve this problem for many more hospitals and touch many more patient lives. And that's how it happened. So the product actually evolved. It's still evolving as we deal with newer hospitals with newer challenges. So it's still evolving. But yes, we had kind of an idea, but it was kind of solving the problem more than a product itself. What is the point in which one have to consider retire from an entrepreneurship? Tough question again, but that's what I had mentioned in the presentation, saying that you have to take a non-emotional view of the company. Sometimes it helps to get. It depends on two things. Sometimes, as insider, you are very confident, overconfident sometimes even. Uh, but you might see something that others don't see, and if you have the conviction that there is something out of this, then yes, persistence is the answer to success. But if you are able to take a detached view of your company, you might be able to uh, get opinions from outside to see if there are errors in your business model, and if the business model has an inherent error in the business model itself, where your unit levels are not profitable, and that's the simple thing where you have to take it. If your units level profitability is negative, uh, and you don't have access to funds to keep funding and feeding the cash burn, then you have to consider retiring from an entrepreneurship. So that's two things. If you are unable to have cash to keep supporting a cash burn at unit levels, so you can support cash flow at corporate expenses, but at unit levels, if it's not profitable, then you have to take a serious view of your business itself. I have more knowledge about federal bankruptcy protection than I thought I did, but bankruptcy filing in India similar to the US. Actually, Jason, the Indian bankruptcy code has just come in, so it gives you protection. Uh, but when we were going through this bankrupt situation, no, we weren't going to file for bankruptcy. We were hoping that we would actually tide over this. We did. Uh, but no, we didn't file in India, and at that time, bankruptcy filing was extremely cumbersome, and I think you would rather go bankrupt and run away than actually file that time. Today, India is a lot better. We have a bankruptcy code. So, but to answer your question straight, bankruptcy filing in India is similar to the US. I'm not sure about how it is in the US, but India has a process today, and we didn't file now. As a startup, Billy Kishore, as a startup, would you advise that one should start with few or no employees to avoid bankruptcy? Well, the answer is you have to start with whatever is required. Nothing more, nothing less. Uh, if you can give away a small equity to your employees for somebody who you are sure is going to add a lot of value, then you need them. As a startup, you have to stretch yourself. Not thin enough that you're going to crack, but you absolutely have to stretch yourself. So, as a founder, whatever you cannot do, you have to get somebody to do it. But it's not a luxury. Even if you have cash to start up, you have to learn to be frugal, and that's the biggest lesson that we've learned. We are working on now. I'm working on multiple other areas, and we are, of course, we know better now. But you need who you need, and whatever you can do, you have to do. Uh, there is no dignity of labor in a startup. You are everything, from being the CEO to the janitor. It is you, and whatever you cannot do, you have to get something to do it. That's the straight answer to that. Hi, Aneep. Another question. I'm a tech guy. Did a tech thing kind of fail? What made you buy into the tech partners' ideas? What did you have in common? And also the partner future income. I am not sure I understand the question. As I'm a tech guy and did run a tech business that kind of failed, what made you buy into the tech partners' idea? We didn't buy into a tech partners' idea. We built the tech ourselves. We took a lot of help from outside. We took an off-the-shelf product and customized it. And today it bears no resemblance to the original product itself. But we use technology in this particular venture. We use technology as an enabler more than anything else. I might want to partners. I might want partners in future for my current company. Also, I don't think I understood your question again. But if you can get more specific, I may be able to answer it. Hi, Frederick. Which level of funding financial backup would you consider sufficient for an FDA approval process approximately? Sorry, Frederick, I'm not the guy for that. Things work very differently in the US, and I'm not very aware of the FDA requirements. So, uh, unfortunately, I don't have much to add. There is somebody that MIT put me in touch with when I did the bootcamp. Was Dr. Kingsley Chin, who ran some kind of a health tech ventures. Uh, so he has a lot of ideas, and he's worked with a lot of companies which do FDA rated stuff. And in fact, he offered to open up my wellness in the US, which I couldn't take because of my commitments in India. So he could probably reach out to him. Health Tech Ventures, I think it's called, Dr. Kingsley Chin. He may be able to answer that. Hi, Giovanni. I would ask, what is the main secret to move forward from the bankruptcy? Like I said, it's the conviction that there is something better at the end of it. We knew that the market was there. We knew that we got into this bankruptcy because of a mistake, a pretty big mistake, but a mistake on our side. We took a non-emotional view. We realized that our individual units were profitable, so it is not a business that is not sustainable. So once we were comfortable that this is a business that is sustainable, but it's gotten where it has gotten because of a mistake from our side, we realized that we have to find ways to tide over this, and that was the trigger to move forward from the bankruptcy. So we weren't actually bankrupt, but we were near bankrupt, and we kept the company alive before we turned it around. So yeah. Hi again, Biliki. So if one can't afford to pay a valuable employee, can one offer shares to? Yes, absolutely. That depends on, of course, how much the contribution is going to be. So absolutely. It is, you can offer shares, but you have to be very, very careful if you're offering shares as an employee versus offering shares as a co-founder, because they're two completely different roles, and equity is gold. So be very careful who you're giving equity to. Giving equity to a co-founder who's got as much skin in the game as you have is very different from giving equity shares to an employee. So you have to be very careful. That's why it's very clearly defined as ESOPs, which is kind of a retainer strategy to get commitment. But I think you have to be very careful in differentiating between the two: equity for co-founders versus equity for employees. I hope that answers your question.
Hey, Wasim.
Hey, I can't hear you. Okay, I think I have one last question to take.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, I think I have one last question to take. Is that fine?
Yeah, can you hear me now?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay, sorry. Yeah, I think we're out of time.
Okay.
We're a bit over time, but I just want to quickly thank you for joining us on this webinar today. I think, the story you shared and the insights, the lessons were really great, and I think the audience really enjoyed it.
Okay.
I think we
thanks for the opportunity
from the audience. So I want to thank, the audience members that joined us today.
Thanks, guys. Thanks, everybody, for joining.
Yeah, and we'll be sharing the live webinar recording on our website.
Okay.
So for anybody that wants the slides or that wants, to review the learnings here, they can go there. And if they have any follow-up questions, they can email us at bootcamp@mit.edu, and we'll forward those over to you if you want to share more with some of the participants today.
Happy to.
Awesome. Well, okay. Thanks again, and hopefully you can join us again on another seminar sometime in the future.
Happy to. Let me know if I can help anyone.
Awesome. All right. Have a great day.
All right. Thanks.
Hi, everyone.
Again, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, good night, guys.
Yeah.